It began with a question no one ever expected to ask. Could Jungkook, the youngest member of BTS, be more relatable than Taylor Swift, the woman who built an empire out of emotional storytelling? For weeks now, that question has haunted the internet like an echo, bouncing between TikTok clips, Reddit debates, and late-night fandom wars that refuse to die down. One simple comparison, one reckless, almost heretical idea, has split American pop culture in two, setting Swifties and ARMYs on opposite sides of an emotional battlefield neither of them saw coming. The spark that lit this wildfire wasn't a scandal, a collaboration, or even a direct quote. It was a feeling, an unsettling sense that something in pop music had shifted. When Jungkook's Standing Next to You began trending again on TikTok, American users, many of whom had never paid deep attention to his lyrics before, found themselves caught off guard. They came for the visuals, the choreography, the Calvin Klein charm. But they stayed for something else. The quiet ache in his words, the unguarded intimacy of a man whispering what millions had felt but never said. One user posted a simple line: "Jungkook feels real." Within hours, that phrase turned into a cultural fault line. Swifties rushed in to defend their queen, reminding everyone that Taylor Swift practically invented the art of turning heartbreak into gold. "You can't just come for the storyteller of our generation," one fan wrote, furious but shaken. But then others, many of them longtime Swift fans themselves, admitted something uncomfortable. Jungkook's lyrics, stripped of metaphor and bravado, felt like they were written in the language of today's loneliness. Taylor dramatizes heartbreak. One viral tweet said, "Jungkook just breathes through it." That's when things got messy. American media outlets began to notice the wave of discussions spreading through fandom spaces usually quiet about K-pop. Suddenly, comparisons between All Too Well and Still With You flooded YouTube. Reaction videos featuring fans listening to Jungkook for the first time racked up millions of views. Even critics who had spent years analyzing Taylor's lyrical craftsmanship began to look at Jungkook with new eyes. They found something compelling in his restraint, something disarmingly modern in the way he conveys emotion without ornament. Unlike Taylor's diaristic storytelling, which builds entire worlds around each verse, Jungkook's writing lives in the pauses, in the space between words. His songs rarely announce their pain. They let you feel it through his breath, through the cracks in his tone, through what he chooses not to say. For a generation that has grown weary of overexposure and performance, that kind of silence feels sacred. Taylor Swift taught her listeners to speak their truth out loud. Jungkook, in contrast, offers permission to feel it quietly. As the conversation deepened, people began to realize that this wasn't just about music. It was about what it means to be seen. Taylor Swift has always represented the narrative of self-expression, the courage to turn heartbreak into identity. Jungkook, meanwhile, represents the quiet resilience of those who live their emotions inwardly. His fans describe his voice as a shelter, a mirror, a heartbeat. He doesn't craft songs like statements. He offers them like confessions whispered in the dark. And that vulnerability, delivered in both English and Korean, transcends language entirely. A BuzzFeed writer summed it up in one haunting line: "Jungkook doesn't tell you what to feel. He lets you find yourself in his silence." That quote alone seemed to flip the entire narrative of pop relatability upside down. In an era defined by noise, Jungkook's ability to say everything without saying too much has become its own form of poetry. Suddenly, millions of American listeners were rethinking what it means to be real in music, but the internet never allows peace for long. As this debate gained momentum, Swifties began dissecting the arguments with the precision of scholars. They pointed out that Taylor has been writing emotional truth for nearly 2 decades, that her lyrical craftsmanship shaped the very language that allows artists like Jungkook to thrive today. One fan wrote, "Without Taylor, we wouldn't even know how to talk about vulnerability in pop." ARMYs responded just as fiercely, arguing that Jungkook's storytelling doesn't imitate, it evolves. "Taylor writes about what she survived," one fan replied. "Jungkook writes about what he's still surviving." That single sentence spread like wildfire, accumulating hundreds of thousands of likes across platforms. There's something deeper happening here, beyond fan loyalty. Jungkook's rise as a lyrical storyteller represents a cultural shift. For years, Western pop has dictated the emotional vocabulary of global music. Now, a Korean artist is rewriting those codes in real time, and America is listening. His songs carry the same universal themes of longing, regret, and devotion, yet they're wrapped in a quiet, introspective sensitivity that feels distinctly 21st century. His emotion doesn't come with explanations. It comes with texture, tone, and timing. One critic from Rolling Stone put it bluntly: Taylor Swift writes the story she's already processed. Jungkook sings the story he's still inside of. That distinction matters. It defines the difference between reflection and immediacy, between control and surrender. And maybe that's what today's listeners crave: not closure, but coexistence with their feelings. Even the fan reactions mirror this cultural divide. While Taylor's fandom often celebrates catharsis and empowerment, Jungkook's fans talk about healing and stillness. It's not about shouting your truth, it's about surviving it. When one fan commented, "His music feels like the moment after you stop crying," the post exploded with over 200,000 likes. People recognize themselves in that sentiment. In the way his songs hold space for emotions too fragile to articulate. The debate eventually reached the media mainstream, and journalists began questioning what it meant for pop's emotional hierarchy. For decades, Taylor Swift's lyrical dominance has been untouchable. Yet now, here was a 27-year-old from Busan gently challenging that crown, not through competition, but through sincerity. It wasn't arrogance, it was authenticity, and then the plot thickened. Rumors began circulating that Jungkook's songs had been added to playlists associated with Taylor's team. Fans attending a rehearsal for the Eras tour claimed they heard "Standing Next to You" playing faintly over the speakers. Whether it was coincidence or acknowledgement, no one could say, but the internet didn't need confirmation to spiral. Some fans even imagined a future collaboration, dubbing it the emotional apocalypse of pop. Others joked that the world wasn't ready for the kind of honesty that would come from a Jungkook-Taylor duet. The truth is, this entire discourse says less about rivalry and more about evolution. Music isn't static, it moves with its audience, reflecting their changing needs. Taylor's songs once taught listeners how to name heartbreak. Jungkook's teach them how to sit with it. Together, they map the emotional topography of a generation caught between exposure and exhaustion, wanting to feel deeply but also to survive quietly. In the end, no one can truly decide who's more relatable. Relatability isn't a contest, it's a mirror. Taylor and Jungkook both offer reflections of our humanity from different angles. One writes in chapters, the other breathes in fragments. One teaches us to reclaim our stories, the other reminds us that even unfinished stories have meaning. Yet the question lingers, like a lyric that refuses to fade. Has Jungkook quietly become the emotional voice of a new generation? Maybe so, maybe not. But as streaming numbers climb and conversations deepen, it's clear that his storytelling has pierced something sacred in the global audience. A viral tweet captured it perfectly, simple yet devastatingly true. Taylor writes for the moments we can't forget. Jungkook sings for the ones we can't explain. That line now floats endlessly across the internet, reposted by fans from both sides, proving that this isn't a war, it's an awakening. And as the noise of debate slowly fades into silence, one truth remains. Both Taylor Swift and Jungkook have achieved the rarest thing in modern music. They've made millions of people, across language and culture, stop scrolling, stop performing, and just feel. Perhaps that's what this was all about from the start. Not who's better, but who reminds us that being human still matters in a world that often forgets how to be. What began as a simple debate has now evolved into one of the most unexpected conversations in American pop culture this year. The clash between Taylor Swift's lyrical dynasty and Jungkook's quiet emotional revolution has become something bigger than fandom. It's a reflection of how people today experience art, connection, and themselves. Every scroll through social media reveals new voices joining the conversation. Fans crying, critics confessing confusion, musicians expressing respect. Somewhere between the noise of hashtags and the silence of late-night listening sessions, a new kind of emotional language is forming. In Los Angeles, a college student posted a tearful reaction video of herself listening to Jungkook's Still With You for the first time. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Why does it feel like he's singing something I never told anyone?" That single video, shot under dim light with trembling hands, amassed millions of views. The comments section became a confession booth, people writing their own stories of heartbreak, loss, and quiet love, all tied to a voice that carried sincerity instead of spectacle. "He doesn't sound like he's performing," one wrote. "He sounds like he's remembering." And that's exactly what makes Jungkook's music so arresting to an American audience used to confession as performance. Taylor Swift's mastery lies in narrative, her ability to take personal pain and turn it into universal poetry. But Jungkook's strength comes from how he underplays emotion. There's no grand reveal, no lyrical vengeance, no elaborate metaphor. Just fragments of longing woven into melodies so delicate they feel like they could break if you breathed too hard. Music analysts have started calling it the whisper effect. It's the same emotional gravity that made Billie Eilish resonate with millions, but Jungkook brings something else, a sense of sincerity unfiltered by irony or artifice. He doesn't seem to want to be understood. He just lets you in if you're quiet enough to listen. That quality, rare and almost old-fashioned, makes his songs hit like secrets shared in the dark. Meanwhile, Taylor Swift remains the queen of narrative architecture, her music meticulously crafted, her metaphors multi-layered, her bridges the stuff of legend. But that perfection, to some, now feels like distance. As one fan put it, Taylor writes in pen, Jungkook writes in heartbeat. It's not an insult, it's evolution. For a generation who grew up online, bearing their souls through pixelated screens, Jungkook's fragmented emotional honesty feels like the truest form of storytelling. It's not that Jungkook is replacing Taylor, he's redefining what it means to connect. His lyrics speak in subtleties, in sighs, in pauses that carry the weight of whole conversations. And for millions who feel unseen, unheard, or emotionally burnt out, those silences are louder than any bridge Taylor could build. Across the internet, the debate deepens. On Reddit's r/popculture, threads stretch thousands of comments long, dissecting every nuance of their artistry. One user wrote a detailed analysis comparing Taylor's You're on Your Own, Kid to Jungkook's My You, noting that both express loneliness, but in opposite languages. Taylor faces loneliness like a warrior, they wrote. Jungkook treats it like an old friend. The idea spread, becoming a quiet mantra repeated across fan spaces. Even American journalists, once dismissive of K-pop lyricism, are beginning to change their tone. Billboard recently published an editorial titled, Jungkook's Emotional Minimalism is Pop's New Honesty, arguing that his storytelling represents the emotional exhaustion of modern youth, distilled into melody. They compared it to the literary style of Ernest Hemingway, short, precise, devastating. He says less, but he means more, the article concluded, and while the online war rages on, both fandoms have started finding something unexpected, empathy. Swifties began posting videos exploring Jungkook's discography with genuine curiosity, while ARMYs shared compilations of Taylor's most emotional performances, captioned, different languages, same ache. It's as though both sides began to see what the debate had always been trying to prove, not who's better, but how two artists from opposite worlds can tell the same story in entirely different ways. Yet the emotional intensity of the debate refuses to fade. On TikTok, one trending sound features a fan edit where Taylor's all too well 10-minute version transitions seamlessly into Jungkook's Still With You. The caption reads, "One remembers, one waits." The video has over 8 million views. Another viral post simply shows a split screen, Taylor performing in a glittering stadium, Jungkook recording alone in a dim-lit studio, with the text, "Two souls, one truth. Love hurts quietly." The more people compare them, the clearer it becomes that they are not rivals, they're reflections. Taylor Swift writes for the heartbreak you've already survived. Jungkook sings for the one you're still living through. Both speak to the same ache, but through different lenses of time and culture. And maybe that's why the debate feels endless, because it isn't a fight, it's a mirror.